Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Windows and Mirrors. Joining us today, we have a fourth-year anthropology major who has worked as a resident assistant alongside resident staff to assist incoming students on their transition into Cal. Warning, the following podcast contains information about sexual harassment that may be triggering for survivors. We share this student's powerful story with the utmost reverence and grace. We hope it serves as an inspiration for others to continue on a path of self-love and healing. This is her story.
I think coming to Cal, it was one of the first times that I actually began to think about my different identities. And of course, the word intersectionality was kind of like something thrown around and something that I began to learn about and discover myself, what that meant to me. And honestly, it wasn't until I came to Cal and I had several experiences that I began to, recognize my identity as a woman. I think it's something that I just overlooked it. It's just a given, it's part of me and it doesn't really matter. Whether it be like catcalling or those type of things, they were just part of my daily life. And it was something that you couldn't really do something about it. But coming to Cal, of course, you have a lot of a fight against it and a lot of reclaiming of what it is to be a woman and demanding some type of respect. But I think one of the instances that I experienced being aware of my womanhood and how easily it can be crumpled or just taken advantage of was one instance when I was at the residence hall, and of course I'm in charge of 2 floors, and of course I have a good balance of male and female, but most of the males, first years, being exposed to different identities themselves for the first time and not being exposed to the training that I've had or not having the same sensibility that is expected. And it should be expected, but of course people grow up in different ways. So since the beginning there was a lot of flirting, trying to be funny, and me giving people the benefit of the doubt. But there was one instance, one night, when I was in my room and I was already asleep, and there's a knocking on my door. I opened the door and it's a Drunken L Resident. And we had previous exchanges before. We had become really friendly. Typically an RN and a student, it's hey, how you doing and stuff, have a good day. But with him, I had a conversation about family related things, academics, personal things that he was going through. So I thought we had a good bond. But in this instance, the student was intoxicated and he propped open the door and he just went into my room and he sat down on the couch and he was making inappropriate comments of just suggesting things, and I was not comfortable, of course. So I kind of pushed him out of my room, but he was a tall guy. He was pretty big guy, athlete. So I'm asking him, are your roommates here so we can get you to bed? And he continues to kind of lean towards me, and I'm just trying to keep my distance. He falls on the ground. I'm trying for him to get to his room, trying to pick him up. Finally, he gets up. We walk over to his room, and these are suites, so there's different layers to the rooms. So the first layer that you have to go into is a little common area which connects to another room. And so I prop open the door, make sure that I'm not fully in, because that is something that it can be dangerous to just be completely like inside of a room. So I pop open the door and both of his roommates are there, and I'm asking them, "Can you get him to bed?" And they kind of just like look at me and laugh it off. And so when I'm trying to get him into his room, he grabs me and he tries to like make out with me or kiss me. And at that point, I'm scared because there's these two roommates who are not doing anything, and he is completely holding me. And at that point, I thought I was going to be, like raped or assaulted or something like that. I had never thought in my life that I would go through something like that. But at that point, I was just like in utter surprise. I was shocked. And I think he realized what he was doing, even though he was intoxicated. And he let go of me when I was trying to struggle out of his hold. But once I turned around to leave the room, he slapped my butt, and then he completely closed the door behind me. And so I was outside in the hallway trying to process what happened, not knowing if, I guess I was ashamed, not knowing if I had done something to provoke that, not knowing if what had happened was serious enough for me to speak about it, not knowing how me speaking about it would like get the student in trouble. And to me, now looking back at it, it's kind of funny that I was having all those thoughts instead of that is not okay. So I think I went into back into my room very ashamed, disappointed in myself that I had allowed that to happen, very powerless and hopeless, knowing that even within my home that could happen, and not knowing even imagine if that happens in your home, what can happen outside of your home. I think after that, I didn't tell my supervisor, I didn't tell anyone of higher authority, just because I didn't want to get him in trouble, giving him the benefit of the doubt. You were intoxicated, you didn't know what you were doing. But at the same time, knowing what the repercussions might have been of some of the steps that I took in order to get him to his room, that bureaucratically or the administration might have seen it some other way. Maybe I had to deal with the consequence myself too. So that is something that I don't appreciate about the system. It's very bureaucratic and it respects more the guidelines, the steps, than it does the people who are supposed to be following it. It's definitely an experience that I carry with me every day. It has changed how I navigate certain spaces. I think my next year after that, coming into UNRA, I was very distant from male residents, trying to build up that boundary. Definitely making sure that they knew that it wasn't okay, which can be a good thing, but at the same time, it's sad that it had to come to that. And I think I did at the beginning of the next semester of leaving UNRA, I isolated myself a lot. I found myself not wanting to go into the hallways, not wanting to socialize, not wanting to reach out. Now I realize it was a traumatic experience, and it has been hard for me to have a relationship with a male. Just navigating that once again. Yeah, I mean, it's something definitely to learn from, but at the same time, it has a lot of problematic components to it. And I feel our administration or whoever is at the top, it shouldn't be a question of me. Should I talk about this or should I not? Should I reach out? Should I not? I think if it doesn't feel like a safe space, then that's a problem. And I think that is something that needs to be addressed. And I feel there's a lot of campaigns against sexual harassment or assault, but in reality, we've seen before, the victim is often questioned and just brushed aside. And mostly when it comes to like people who are important within campus, like athletes, that is something that can easily disappear. But I mean, I've learned from it, made me stronger. But it's definitely something that I wish people didn't have to go through. I think it's hard because we have people coming from all over the place who have not been exposed to inclusivity, sensibility training, how to party safe training, those type of things. And it's something that they are exposed to at the beginning of the year, but I feel like it should be a continuous thing. I feel like it should be either like a class or a decal that is like mandatory, that is offered for first years, second years, third years, fourth years to take it because it's very necessary, I feel. Because for me, I am involved in spaces in which they give you those trainings on a weekly basis. Like you talk about it every day. They're causes you fight for because you're part of that space. You're that minority that's being oppressed. And so you want to voice out what it is that's going on. But for other populations within campus, it might be something that doesn't even cross their mind. Like, yeah, I went to Bear Pact one time and like it was hella boring, I fell asleep, whatever. But I think it's very relevant. Obviously, those type of things are not going to be able to reach everyone, but they're there. It's an effort and they're going to reach someone. Like, I had no idea. I feel like we've learned so much and like we've been able to reshape certain perspectives or certain like language, how we approach situations or body language, how to be more respectful and considerate of others. System wide, like reaching out to like different populations, not only the populations who organize themselves. And I know that's difficult, but I do feel there's a need for like that type of education within populations that do not have it.
Thank you for tuning in on another episode of Windows and Mirrors. It is vital that we continue to speak out against all forms of harassment and violence, and to hold space as a community for these narratives to be shared with love, acceptance, and free from shame or blame. If you would like to learn more about the different ways you can support survivors of harassment or assault, please visit survivorsupport.berkeley.edu. Love and appreciation to everyone listening in.